My name is Ryan Himmel, and I'm the founder and CEO of BIDaWIZ.com, a professional network for tax and accounting services, and the host of this event. So let's get started with an overview of today's agenda. On a high level, we'll discuss sales tax compliance risks that many businesses face, the sales tax solution providers in the market, how a business should be thinking about evaluating solutions, and then lastly, how to identify the right product for your business. Finally, we'll entertain any questions that you may have on this topic. Please note that you can simply type in your questions in the question box of the webinar dashboard on the right side of your screen as we go through the webinar. So without further ado, let's get started with a bit of information about us. BIDaWIZ is a professional network that connects small businesses to trusted accountants and advisors through our Ask a Professional, Hire a Professional, and knowledge-based solutions. Over the past few years, we've become experts in the sales tax space as it relates to both the laws as well as automated sales tax compliance solutions. We have experience with performing a multitude of services, from a nexus analysis, sales tax reverse audit, or any other form of specialized research related to sales tax or use tax. Lastly, we've established strong vendor relationships with the providers in the market and have a successful business track record of helping both small businesses and accounting partners identify the right solution for their business or practice. On that note, when we look at all small businesses that come to us for sales tax assistance, there are a couple of certain themes that are common. One of which is that sales tax compliance is very difficult and expensive from a hardware, software, and personnel perspective. In addition, there are certain sales tax compliance risks that play into the common core problem. They are both external and internal. When looking at the external risks, they may be changes in tax nexus rules for the state in which your business is located, changes in how the exemption certificates are managed within your jurisdiction, or how the sales tax remittance process works. In addition to the external risks, there are also internal risks, such as changes in your company footprint, increases in locations into new tax jurisdictions. You may also have internal changes to your information systems, such as your point of sale, ERP, or accounting technology solution. Then there is the risk that internally your staff may not be keen on all the new sales tax rules, or that they may make a mistake when populating a sales tax return manually. So how do we address these external and internal risks? The answer is automated, or at least in part, automated sales tax compliance software. There are a whole host of providers that you can see from this slide. You have companies such as Vertex that's been the stalwart for ages, and then there are others that have been around over the past 10 years like Avalara with some interesting cloud-based solutions, and then there are other up-and-comers like TaxJar. But when we observe the sales tax compliance space, it's really interesting to note that the market is heavily fragmented. You have niche sales tax solutions providers in which the scope of their products only focus on certain states, while others may only focus on specific sales tax software functions, such as the rate calculation, while others may have a full suite of services that include the rate calculation, exemption certificate management, as well as following the actual returns. Then there are differences between providers that have a cloud-based solution such as Avalara or TaxJar, while others focus on having the actual sales tax calculator utilizing an on-premise hardware solution such as Vertex in a closed environment. The pricing models also vary drastically by provider. Some charge a fixed fee based on the number of on-premise hardware units you have at the site, while others charge based off of subscription or the volume of transactions that's remitted each month. I believe TaxJar has a monthly fee. Avalara is based more on the number of transactions that's remitted each month. And then there are also differences in the ability to scale. Depending on the provider, there may be limitations due to the fact that an on-premise technician is needed when you're working with an on-premise solution provider. Product capability is also a key area to consider. If you need all three core sales tax services, but the provider only offers one, or it's not compatible with others, i.e. the sales tax calculator for one provider isn't compatible with the exemption certificate system of another, you could have a big problem because certain providers are best in class in certain functions of sales tax compliance while others are in other areas. So you may want to mix and match. Integration is also an important factor to consider. There are some solutions that are compatible with certain point-of-sale systems and ERP and accounting solutions, while others may not be. These are just some of the many ways of why the marketplace is heavily fragmented. Given the market is really fragmented, how should you think about your evaluation process when selecting a provider? First, you want to identify what sales tax software services are needed. Does your company need help with tax rate compliance, meaning you're able to accurately calculate the sales tax rates based on location? Or perhaps you want a solution that will automatically remit your sales tax returns for you so you don't have to do it manually. Think of it similar to a do-it-yourself personal tax software product like TurboTax, but this is done in a much different way. Or perhaps you need an effective way to track and manage your exemption certificates for your clients, maybe exempt from sales tax. The second area to focus on is reviewing the product in detail. You want to make sure the software program calculates the sales tax rates with a 100% accuracy rate. You want to also have comfort that the sales tax returns are filed in a timely fashion and that the exemption certificate management software easily and effectively communicates with your sales tax software calculator so that you're not charging sales tax to exempt clients. You also want to have a great understanding as to the capability and scalability of the product. Does it offer all three services, and can it power a high volume of transaction? Maybe your business doesn't need all these services right now, but you may in the future. So it's important to work with a provider that has that capability to scale as you scale. Then you'll want to consider if you should be using a cloud-based or an on-premise solution for your sales tax needs. You want to take a look at whether or not the product is compatible with your existing ERP and point-of-sale system. In addition, if you make any changes to your technology in the future, how will that impact your sales tax software? You might have ERP or point-of-sale system that you're very comfortable with now, but the market changes and you may make a change in the future due to price, due to functionality. So you want to work with a provider that is abreast of all these changes in the market and has good connectors. Compatibility is also relevant to the number of store locations as well. As you expand your business, you're going to want to work with a provider that has that capability that can serve all these different states. Lastly, there's the cost of the product. Is it a predictable subscription-based pricing model like some of the cloud offerings, or is it based on the amount of on-premise hardware solutions that you have on your site, which is more relevant to a large enterprise? So what would be the ideal solution in most cases? One in which there's an intersection, at least most of the time, of rich product features, an end-to-end service offering, compatibility, scalability, ease of use, and predictable low cost of pricing. Most frequently, there are two companies that come up more than others, Vertex and Avalara. Vertex has been around for over 30 years, while Avalara launched about 10 years ago, but it was the first to market as it relates to a cloud-based sales tax compliance solution. So what's better? It really depends on your needs. A lot of larger enterprises in the retail space use Vertex. They use the on-premise hardware solution, while the small and medium-sized businesses, that market's been heavily penetrated by Avalara. So it really depends on your specific needs. But one way to really compare the two is you want to compare on-premise versus cloud-based solutions. So what are the differences? As we look at the different attributes here, in terms of security, cloud-based solution that's provided, they provide the security, whereas in an on-premise hardware solution, you need to rely on your own existing policies and the software and staffing that you have internally and be able to manage them from a security perspective. So it's more your responsibility as opposed to the vendor's responsibility if you're using an on-premise solution as it relates to security. In terms of updates, with a cloud-based solution, it's fairly flexible in terms of whenever there's an update to a new sales tax rule, it will be automatically updated into your system. So you have fairly real-time updates with a cloud-based solution, and this is also managed by the vendor. Whereas an on-premise solution, that's the client's responsibility, and you're going to have to use a manual process in most instances to update your on-premise hardware so that any tax changes are reflected in that hardware. And then, of course, if you have any changes to your ERP or point-of-sale systems, those patches will have to be updated independently, and that will be the responsibility of the client. In terms of staffing needs for a cloud-based solution, it's fairly intuitive, so there's not going to be a larger requirement to train a lot of employees. There's just going to be some modest training required, whereas an on-premise solution, you're really going to have a technician on site that's going to be able to easily maintain these on-premise solutions, and that's going to be somewhat expensive, and it could also be time-consuming. In terms of licensing and maintenance fees, typically cloud-based solutions, there's an annual fee. As the businesses are bigger businesses, large enterprise, retail, they may charge based off of your point-of-sale lanes, whereas an on-premise solution usually has annual license fees and then recurring maintenance fees, and that's going to really depend on how well you're able to maintain your on-site hardware. In terms of total cost of ownership, that's also going to vary. Typically, the cloud-based solutions are subscription-based based on the number of transactions that are emitted. On the on-premise solutions, that's typically dependent on hardware, software, maintenance, and labor costs. So that's somewhat of an unknown. You're not going to know what your total costs are going to be. In terms of implementation, the cloud-based solution typically takes 30 to 60 days, and that's because all the technology is hosted in the cloud, and there's not a requirement for significant training, whereas on-premise solutions, that's going to take more time, at least 6 months. Obviously, it depends on how big your business is and how many locations you have, but the whole installation process and training your employees to keep the solutions up to date, that's going to require some time. In terms of scalability, those also vary significantly. With a cloud-based solution, the vendor is managing the system as your business is remitting more and more transactions, and it's fairly easy for them to do that. And they'll be hosted with multiple data centers, and there should be some redundancy there. With an on-premise solution, as you scale, that's kind of the responsibility of the client, because you're going to be required to install new hardware, and that's going to take some time, and there could be some security issues with that as well. In terms of flexibility, this is highly dependent on each provider in terms of whether or not they connect with other ERP and point-of-sale systems, and this also varies. In terms of end-to-end compliance, there are some differences in how certain cloud and on-premise providers calculate sales tax rates. Some of them use zip codes to calculate the rates, whereas others, like Avalara, they use geospatial technology. So they look at the latitude and longitude of your specific location at the rooftop level, and that's going to provide you the most accurate sales tax rate, because you can actually have instances in which the sales tax rates vary within zip codes. So what are the most attractive characteristics when we think about sales tax compliance solutions? Of course, as I just mentioned, utilizing geospatial technology as opposed to zip codes is just going to be more accurate. It's going to reduce some costly sales tax audits in the future. You're going to probably want to work with a provider that has the ability to scale as you scale. You want to work with a provider that is highly compatible. They have strong OEM and strategic relationships with the various key connectors in the point of sale and ERP space. Probably want to work with a provider where you have a good sense of what the pricing is going to be like. With a subscription-based pricing model based on volume, you'll have an idea of what the total cost is going to be. With a pricing model that's based off of the number of hardware solutions you're using and some unknown maintenance costs, it might be harder for you to predict what the price is going to be like, that at least in the beginning. And then, of course, you want to work with a provider that has versatility. Let's say that you have a retail store, you have several retail stores, and one of your retail stores has really spotty internet connection for one reason or another. So you might need an on-premise hardware solution as well. So having a company that can provide both, which there are in the marketplace, can be extremely helpful to you. So I've highlighted a lot of different ways that you think about selecting a sales tax solution. What are some questions as small business owners as well as accounting partners that you should have right out of the gate just to think about as you're going through the process of selecting a sales tax solution? So first and foremost, you should know who is your sales tax solution provider. And this should be fairly obvious for the small businesses that are already using one. For the accounting partners, you're going to want to ask your clients about this. And then what are your current costs? How much are you paying in sales tax audits currently? Do you have internal staff that's manually remitting sales tax returns? If so, what's that cost? And then if you have a retail store, how many point-of-sale machines do you have per location? And then what is your point of sale system? What is your ERP system? And then does each store have a strong internet connection? And this could be relevant as it relates to the cloud-based solution that I alluded to earlier. And then what are your needs? Do you need a sales tax calculator? Do you need help filing sales tax returns? What about tax-exempt certificate management? These are all sorts of discovery questions that you should be thinking as either a small business or an accountant. So just to recap the prepared remarks that I've already outlined, we went through some of the sales tax compliance risk. We went through a lot of the different solution providers in the market. We provided a way for you to evaluate each of these providers and how you should think about it, and then hopefully you'll be able to come up with a solution that is right for you, for your business, or for your accounting practice. Now that we've completed the presentation, let's take a look to see if there are any questions in the queue. Okay, here's a question. Our company currently uses Vertex for our exemption certificate management. However, we'd like to use another provider for sales tax rate calculation. Is that possible? So one of the things that I highlighted during the presentation was that there might be certain providers that are best in class in certain areas, while others may be better in certain areas of sales tax. So given that Vertex actually works in a closed environment, so if you're using the Vertex exemption certificate management system, it doesn't work with an Avalara, say, sales tax calculator. So that's a factor to consider. I'm an accountant. I'm looking to build a sales tax practice and utilize some of these software tools. Do you have any recommendations on how I should go about informing my clients about these solutions? One thing I would say is I think it's critical to interview your client and to gain a sense and understanding of the nature of their business. What is their business? You should obviously know this, of course, but what is the volume of transaction that they're remitting each month? What are their growth plans? What are they paying in terms of sales tax audit fees if they already know? And then what about their technology? What types of systems do they have in place from an ERP and point of sale perspective? This is because many clients actually, they don't really know this information. So it's really important that you dig deep and try to get this information to help facilitate this process. Okay, we also have another question from Noah Ham. He is stating that Sales Tax Data Link also offers a tax filing solution that does work with Vertex front end. So that's interesting. We didn't know that, and we're glad that you shared that with us, and I hope the community finds that helpful. So let's just see if there's any other questions in the queue. Doesn't appear that that is the case. That wraps up today's session. We want to thank you for attending today's webinar on finding the right sales tax solution. And feel free to reach out to me at the contact information detailed on the screen if you're interested in our sales tax advisory service or working with one of our sales tax solution providers. And if you have any questions or comments, we look forward to sharing more helpful webinars with you in the future, starting in September again. Thank you again.